would you mind just kind of telling me about your practice, what you and your associates specialize in?
Yep. I have been in the mental health field for about 15 years. I started as a community mental health center. Over those, I had a couple years in, and then I went to group private practice, and I was with another group for about 8 or 10 years, and then I went solo afterwards. I started having more clinicians just for the past 4 or 5 years. So right now we have 2 clinicians. They mainly do counseling, therapy, play therapy, individual sessions, family counseling. So mainly the therapy work. And I do already the testing, psychological testing, social security disability, learning disability, child custody evaluation, any type of assessment, dyslexia, rehabilitation, IQ, personality. I do all those testing, trying to focus on more of the testing work instead of the treatment, and my clinicians, both of them, they're specialized in children and adolescents, EMDR, trauma, adults, so they kind of share the, the variety. We share the variety of the practice. So.
Sure. Okay. So just kind of in a nutshell, we're a year into the pandemic. Did you guys see an uptick in evaluations and patients or anything like that?
For the past 1 year, my clinicians did more telehealth, and I think the insurance company started reimburse, had opened a new policy for the telehealth program for the master levels clinicians to see their clients. I think in the past, more of a psychologist, medical doctors do the telehealth type of thing on the camera, but now they started doing this with the master degree level therapist. So there are some changes in the kind of, I'm not sure, I have to ask them about the diagnosis changes. People have a lot of more of anxiety. We post videos on how to cope with anxiety. Since the pandemic, we started doing more online video, informational videos. We put out once every month, since people staying home now more. So we'll do different topics for each month. 3 therapists will be sitting together discussing, one of them will be how anxiety and treatment, how to treat anxiety and trauma. One will be how to choose your therapist. One will be by talking to your family and friends who cannot replace therapy. So we try to discuss about different scenarios each month to be helpful, provide helpful information for the community. For the clientele, I used to see a lot of kids when I was doing therapy. I think it remains similar, not more kids, not more adults. It's just more online now. But since we are reopening up, I think a majority of school now is trying to reopen 5 days a week after the spring break. And I think we get more kids back. I think that's a good thing,
Yeah, so school age children, like, how have you seen COVID and the changes in their day-to-day lives affecting them, mentally, anxiety, depression, anything like that?
Yeah, it's kind of increased their anxiety level, especially when children or adolescents or adults already have anxiety problems. So instead of worry about something, normally they would be worried about like my grades or paying bills, those things. They start worrying about focusing now, germs, virus. What if I get this? What if I get that? So I think it's just switch the topics, strict focus from something they probably would day in, day out worry about to just super focused on this pandemic, especially when the media is on, the social media, Facebook, everybody's talking about it, then just highlighting their anxiety level. I think it's especially hard for people with anxiety already or with some type of OCD, obsessive compulsive. So because the OCD is you're thinking about it over that is difficult for them. And for other diagnoses, personality disorder probably does not affect it too much, pandemic. I mean, everybody's anxiety level in general is highlighted, but certain diagnoses for certain groups definitely affect more.
And you mentioned, so, with school, the fourth quarter is coming up and many schools are coming back to, either all in person or that like blended in person. And you said that's good. Can you elaborate on why that's good or what you think about that?
Yeah, I had to ask a question about the students' academic functioning with the superintendent, of Moline. And she said they have been tracking the academic grades for children remote versus as much as facing face to face, as absolutely face to face children doing better than the remote learner, especially full-time remote. So it sounds like the more face-to-face type of interaction at school or learning experience, the better academic. So we're talking about functioning. We're talking about functioning. One of them is their academic functioning. What's your grades? That's the so-called academic functioning. So far, face-to-face children absolutely doing better than the non-face-to-face children. In another way, I could see, for children that's at home, I mean, kind of you really don't have a schedule. I mean, yeah, you can have a sitter, you can have, especially younger kids, and those sitters, they can help you, but at the same time, they're not trained as a teacher. They don't have a syllabus. They can't really help you going through. They can't write down all the formulas and then make you follow how, explain those as a teacher. So I can see why the face-to-face learners doing better. I think, for younger, it's probably a little bit tougher, especially kids with a learning disorder, especially with kids with non-verbal learning disorder, verbal learning disorder, which means they can only learn certain way. So they have to be watching you doing it in order to learn better. So it's hard on kids with IEP, hard with the kids in special ed, to not see the teachers to learn that way. So in general, for younger kids, it's probably worse than the higher functioning older kids.
So are you kind of saying that, the COVID pandemic changes have maybe just amplified anyone who may have a learning disability or, is still developing, that kind of thing?
It makes them, yes, it makes it harder for those kids. But in general, for a 12-year-old, if you can choose face-to-face learning, 12-year-old with no diagnoses, right? Face-to-face versus non-face-to-face, I would say face-to-face probably is better. I'm not an educator, I haven't tracked it, but from what I have heard, from other teachers, it's face-to-face is better.
Do you have any concerns on like long-term developmental effects on like young school-age children, having been through this whole year, that it's going to maybe take longer to just bounce back and get into the regular, social interaction and relearning how to behave in school,
Absolutely. I mean, when you're at home, you don't really have a schedule. I have kids in my section says, I'll get home. I don't have to get up this early. I don't have, which is true. They really don't have a set time. Especially for younger kids, you just log in whenever you want to, or, you can go simultaneously the live class. More I'm thinking about a family that really do not have a structure, for them. And I'm not attacking, pointing finger at anybody. There's families, whether it's situational or it's just a family are not involved that much. I would say school is probably the only stability for those kids. Their family parents that heavily involved in drugs or alcohol or just too busy, or something else. Kids seeking stability from their structure, which is school. Going to school, they have each class every day, see the same teacher every day, see the same friends every day, doing similar things and learning. That's their only, stability. When they go home, nobody cares, and then they do whatever. They defend themselves. 8 years old, I've seen 8 years old cook their own supper. And then I have seen they couldn't reach the stove, so they put this the little stool, in front of the oven to cook supper for their 5-year-old, because their parents are drunk, so those families, I know, understand that's not every family, but I'm saying it dysfunctional family do exist. So for kids to thrive in those families, school provides a absolutely wonderful environment. Sports, after school, doing sports, do music, do band, do choir. Um, it provided them with structure and stability, you know. So I think that's a wonderful environment for the kids. So I feel this pandemic for the past 1 year kind of make it harder on the kids that are already in a unfortunate situation, whether it's learning deficits or have a family, unideal family situation. It's really hard on them.
So, like, a bottom line question of mine is, in your eyes, what's worse? The risk of a child contracting COVID and bringing it home to their family, or missing out on all these developmental opportunities that school offers?
Yeah, you're talking about how to choose one evil out of the two. Sometimes it is the situation we have to pick one evil out of two. We cannot have both. So, yep. I mean, in general, children's population is, according to the statistic that you probably already know, is the lesser affected population. You're talking about COVID is more like a senior. I'm not saying children don't die from COVID. I have news. Yes, I know. So, uh, for the developmental wise, I think the school has been doing wonderful jobs by keeping masks on and be careful, cautious, washing hands, keeping distance. They did the best. Probably, I'm not an educator. I'm not in studying, but I think they have done different steps. I know everything is learn and trial right now. Nobody have developed a solid plan how we're going to do this things correctly. What's the long-term effect? Just like, we don't know the long-term effects on children. There's no longitudinal. I think there might be something starting right now, just say with the long-term effect on children's development. But we're right now just talking predicting, we're talking about predicting of human behavior down the road. It's not very accurate. Just like there is no studies right now predicting after child custody evaluation, and then the judge goes with, because I do child custody evaluation as well. So I'm just thinking, the court wants psychologists who are predicting with children, is it getting better if the judge goes with the recommendation, or it goes worse? There's no study out there. So all we have is the past study in the past. Okay, these aspects, we need to look into it. Just right now it's so new, so everybody is just guessing. But so far, according to the conversation with the superintendent, Dr. Savage, she said the face-to-face is better. So I will go with that, what I know so far.
Socializing, children and socializing. I have nephews who have done the in-school, the homeschool, blended, all of that. And so, they've got, these families are kind of clinging to each other and playing with their siblings or their neighbor friends. But how do you think that socialization is going for this generation that's in school right now?
All right, the children's socialization, I think, is heavily influenced by parents' fear, how this virus affects their development. If the parents would not let children go anywhere, your children is not going, whether with the pandemic or not. If the parents has a fear enough in general, this world is dangerous, then the kids is not going to get a socialization. Even not the world, the neighborhoods is dangerous. Everybody is bad. So don't you go to cross the street. So in general, now parents fear, anxiety highlighted. So some parents who have anxiety themselves, they will be like, you're not going anywhere, no birthday party, no nothing. But some parents that have less anxiety level, or not as nervous about these things, they will have some so-called private watch party, right? In a movie theater right now. You sit apart. I don't know if they really kids do that, sit apart for a birthday party, but you're supposed to and watching a movie with the 20 kids in the movie theater, because Davenport movie theater open now. You can do private watch party or something. I think you can sit apart too, even it's not private watch party. apart. So some parents would promote these. Kids do have social life. So how the social life goes for kids not only just depend on the whole big, social dynamics, the whole nationwide, but also about how parents would allow the social interaction. What kind of creative ways you would let your kids socialize with other kids as well,
Is
right? So
socializing digitally
that's part.
is it as beneficial as socializing in person?
It's just maybe I'm biased on this. It's just like doing therapy. Is it doing therapy online more efficient than doing therapy or similar efficiency in doing in person? I think from what I was trained, doing things, socializing or doing therapy online is not efficient as see, because you can't really, you miss a lot of body languages, and you miss the feeling and touching. You play a board game. Yeah, you can play board game on the internet, online stuff, but you're missing people's facial expression and a touching and giggling, laughing, and you pitch each other or something. Those things. That's the kids. I think it's important. Um, um, for the kids. That's might be my. There's no research. I had never seen I haven't seen a research, but it's just from my personal experience and from some articles I read about therapy. Is it efficient to do therapy on the internet and stuff? Those is my opinion.
Mm-hmm. And real quick, I'd love to talk parents for a moment. Parents have had to be deciding all year long, okay, am I going to send my child in school? Are we going to do blended, or am I going to pull 100% remote at home? What
Right.
what do you think? What do you think the anxiety level is, or what do you think the hardship is for those parents having to constantly make those decisions all year long? And are they, never knowing if you're making the right choice?
Right. Parents never know if they made the right choice, right? Am I sending the kids to the right school? Am I allowing the kids to drive too quickly? Am I allowing the kids to make a decision of their bedtime too soon? Should I give them a cell phone when they were 12? All these decisions, parents, there's no like guidelines. Or maybe there are some laws to regulate. You have a curfews, that's law. But a lot of these detailed small stuff at home, whether it's about the exposure to virus or not, or having cell phone to small stuff, it's the parents really, it's their value system. Sometimes should I send my child to church or not? It's their value system. Should I homeschool my child? So these things, it's really individual. There's it's nobody else could really guide them. It's day in day out decision making for the parents. So yeah, it's a more stress, more things to worry about, but just as day in day out life. I mean, aren't you going to worry about when your 16-year-old to start driving? Yes. You're going to worry for a year or two. The decisions parents have, or anxiety the parents have to go through with or without the pandemic.
Sure. And I think this has all just made us all a lot stronger in our mental capacity, and dealing with what life throws at you.
Right,
So
right. And a human are adaptable. So through these tough situations, yes, they does build resilience. So I'll have to say that. And I want to add that that's not really necessarily a bad thing of going online. I mean, a lot of people prefer, especially older kids or older adults, not older adults, but adults that have already established a good studying habit is convenient, for somebody that want to get a higher degree. They probably prefer, they can relocate to another state. They probably prefer to online. So I always tell the high schoolers, I said online, it may not be a bad thing. It actually may be a very good thing because you kind of get familiar with the nowadays the trend online class. You just have to post, keep self-disciplined to keep posting your posted. They call it posts every week, once every week. So it may not be a bad thing social wise. We covered, yeah, social development. We talked about that. That is the part probably they were going to missing, how to be socially resilient. But at the same time, they can be socially resilient dealing with online information as well, like the cyberbullying. Cyber, that
Yeah.
requires social skills as well. People spread rumors about you and the Twitter, whatever those media, Facebook or some. How are you going to deal with that? So it's not only just interaction, social skills building, and in face to face, but also online social skills building. When people call you a name online, spread rumor about you online, how you're going to deal with that? That just come to this digital era. Um,
And what age would you be talking about as far as, developing that resiliency?
Resilience starts with since 3. How you resilience, you fell, and are you like just throw yourself to the floor, or you throw coping skills. A 3-year-old can have coping skills, and then self-soothe and calm you down. And if, to adults, we're talking about resilience. So many adults, when they fail, they lose, they get fired, they lost job, they were suicidal, because they don't have coping skills to deal with the stress. Those coping skills, also what I meant is resilience that's established since when you were young. You take a hit. I call it take a hit, take a disappointment. What you do when you fail, how do you bounce back? And those are all the so-called EQ, EQ versus IQ. We need both to be successful, Um, so those are things that's a therapy would emphasize. Therapists should emphasize that, I think EQ can be more molded, developed throughout your life experience versus IQ. But IQ is a little bit more genetically related, inherited, and EQ is more afterwards developed through your life experiences.
What does EQ
Uh,
stand for?
Emotion quotient.
Gotcha.
So, and we talked about the solving social problems and the personal development, about family, dysfunctional family, school provide stability for these children. I'll highly recommend. I'm not saying that you have to be involved in 10 different extracurricular activities just to stress your child out. But at the same time, school extracurricular activities they do provide stability for a young child, especially important for kids that have not very stable home life. That's their world. I want them to focus on their school stuff, whether it's PE, gym, or some basketball game. I want them to focus on that, and because they didn't choose what kind of family they were born. They didn't choose what kind of parents they're going to born into. So if unfortunately they were born in an unstable family, I want them to focus on something that can provide stability, which is our school system, to face interacting with the authority, with the teacher, take them as a role model. And unfortunately, the pandemic really didn't give these type of kids much opportunity because they're home.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and just to reiterate, did we decide which is the lesser of two evils, the in-school
Oh, the
interaction
which
or
one?
the
For if it's a short term, I would say the more evil would be not letting kids to go to school. Right. Uh, for the long term, if we have the potential of getting more kids affected, and for when the kids get infected, they get their parents and senior grandparents infected. For long
right?
term, I just let the kids run around on the street at large. That is more evil because you're talking about infecting different generations now. For short term, kids can rebound back with the social skills missing, some of the school academics. So for short term, I want them to be in school. This might be my personal bias. Some people may hate me for saying that, but you're talking about somebody from a background that my school background was in China. Kids don't have a summer break. Especially during the high school years. You have about 3 weeks, not 3 weeks. 3 weeks instead of 3 months. The summer break, you study till 8 o'clock at night.
Mhm.
You have 2 meals. You go to school at 7, home at 8:30. So you're talking about, I'm from a background like that. So yes, it does affect my perception about schooling a little bit. So did I answer your question for short term and long term?
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Yeah, and I think that's what's on everybody's mind, you know, and like we said, you as a parent, you never know if you're making the right choice. And there's the, well, if I do, if I don't, you know, so yeah, it's good to see kind of both perspectives. And yeah, I think we covered everything. I really appreciate it.